The space station floated silently above the orange and red clouds of a volcanic world. Its metal hull reflected the glow of lava rivers below, and the hum of machinery filled every corridor. People from many planets worked here, studying strange creatures that had never been seen before. Among these creatures were two dragon hatchlings, small and fragile but full of energy. Their scales shimmered with bright colors, gold and red, and their eyes glowed like tiny suns. The scientists called them the most important discovery of the century. The hatchlings lived in a clear habitat filled with rocks, small pools and soft sand. They were watched carefully through glass and sensors. But despite all the precautions, the dragons were nervous and defensive. Whenever anyone approached, they hissed, flapped their tiny wings and snapped their teeth. Even the strongest guards and the clever scientists could not get close. The dragons bit, nipped and darted away. Many people on the station called them dangerous. Some whispered that the creatures should be moved or even left alone. The humans and aliens who lived on the station were busy. Some studied the dragons' movements. Others built machines to measure their health. There were cameras and lights everywhere, and alarms sometimes rang when the dragons became too excited. People rushed to fix problems, but nothing worked. No one could calm them. The dragons seemed to know who was strong, who was loud, and who was nervous. Anyone who tried to act powerful was met with a sharp bite or a quick swipe. In the middle of all this chaos walked a human janitor. He was a simple man with gray hair and gentle eyes. He had been on the station for many years. He cleaned the halls, emptied trash bins and polished floors. He did not work with scientists or guards. He did not argue about the dragons or give advice. He moved quietly, humming old songs from Earth, always careful not to bother anyone. People rarely noticed him. He was small and simple in a world full of complex machines and proud aliens. Every day the janitor passed by the dragon habitat. He watched them for a moment, but he never tried to touch them. He cleaned near their glass walls, sweeping quietly and talking to himself in soft whispers. The dragons watched him too, with curiosity and suspicion. They were used to loud voices, quick movements and bright lights. The janitor had none of that. He moved slowly. He spoke softly. He smelled calm. The dragons did not bite him. They just stared. Other station workers could not understand it. "Why doesn't he get hurt?" they asked. "He is human. He is small. Anyone else would be bitten." They studied him from a distance, but he never noticed. He worked the same way every day. He swept, he polished, he hummed. Sometimes he sat down to rest. Sometimes he poured water into the small fountains near the habitat. The dragons sometimes came closer, sniffing and blinking. But they never touched him. One night the station was quiet. The lights dimmed and most people had gone to their quarters. The janitor carried his mop slowly down the hallway. He stopped near the habitat, leaning on his mop handle. The dragons were awake, their eyes glowing in the dim light. They hissed and flapped their wings at the cameras, but the janitor stayed still. He did not move closer. He did not run. He just leaned and watched them, breathing slowly, his face calm. Something strange happened. One hatchling tilted its head. The other shifted its tiny claws. Slowly they came closer. Not aggressively but carefully, testing. The janitor's calm presence seemed to confuse them. They were used to fear, tension and loud noises. This human gave none of that. They sniffed his uniform, blinked and stepped closer still. The janitor hummed a soft tune, a melody from old Earth songs. The dragons stopped moving for a moment. Their little bodies relaxed just slightly. They had never done this before. No human or alien had been able to get this close without a bite. The cameras caught everything, but the people watching could hardly believe their eyes. Something about this human, so small and quiet, had made the dragons pause. By the time the janitor sat down on the floor near the glass, the hatchlings were inches away. They tilted their heads, blinking, their tiny tails flicking. He smiled gently and whispered, "Hello there, little ones." The dragons watched. They did not move closer yet, but the tension in the air changed. It was as if the room had stopped spinning. For the first time, someone on the station understood that the dragons were not just dangerous. They were nervous. They were testing trust. The janitor stayed there for a long time, humming and watching. The night went on, the station silent except for his soft voice and the quiet breathing of the hatchlings. Outside, the lava glowed and the station's lights dimmed. Inside, a small human and two tiny dragons began a silent understanding. No one could explain why it happened. But the janitor, small and gentle, had found a way to touch the hearts of creatures that no one else could. And this was only the beginning. The next morning, the station was busy again. Scientists rushed to their labs, aliens argued over data, and guards patrolled the corridors. Everyone was talking about the dragons. The cameras had recorded the night before, and the images had spread across the station. The janitor, he wasn't bitten, some whispered. He sat there and they didn't touch him. Others shook their heads. It must be a fluke, they said. But the janitor never noticed the attention. He was already sweeping the floors near the habitat, humming softly, carrying his mop and bucket like he did every day. He had been on the station for over a decade. Many people had come and gone, but he stayed the same. He did not care about fame, rank, or discovery. His world was simple. Clean the floors, empty the trash, polish the halls, and maybe hum a tune or two. He had no interest in impressing anyone. He spoke to the walls, the floors, or sometimes the cleaning robots. No one seemed to mind. His presence was quiet, almost invisible. That invisibility, it seemed, was what drew the hatchlings. The dragons were restless during the day. Bright lights, loud voices, and quick movements always made them defensive. Scientists tried to feed them, but the hatchlings snapped and hissed. Guards tried to approach them, but they leaped back, wings flaring. The station began to treat them as untouchable. Only the janitor moved freely near their habitat. He did not make sudden gestures or loud noises. He moved with care, bending down to pick up dropped papers or sweep up tiny crumbs without startling them. Sometimes he talked to them softly. Easy now, calm. He would whisper, almost like he was talking to a child. The dragons would tilt their heads, blink slowly, and watch him. They never moved closer during the day, but they seemed curious. Other humans and aliens could not get even an inch near them. It was strange to everyone on the station. How could a janitor, someone so small and unimportant in their eyes, be the only one the dragons tolerated? One quiet afternoon, the janitor sat on the floor near the habitat. He had cleaned the hall and needed a break. He leaned against the wall, closed his eyes for a moment, and hummed a tune from his childhood on Earth. The hatchlings were awake in their habitat, watching the people pass by, moving restlessly. But when they noticed him, they froze. Slowly they came closer, curious but cautious. The janitor did not react. He stayed calm, humming softly. A small dragon stepped forward, its claws clicking softly on the sand. It sniffed the janitor's uniform. The other dragon followed, tilting its head to the side. They had never done this before. They had tested everyone, scientists, guards, alien handlers. All were too loud, too quick, or too tense. But the janitor moved with patience. He did not reach for them. He did not try to touch or control them. He simply existed in their space, calm and steady. Other people on the station noticed through the glass. Scientists pressed their faces to cameras, whispering, "Look, he's sitting." They're watching him, they're not biting. Guards scratched their heads. No one understood why it was happening. Some thought the dragons were broken. Others believed it was magic. But the janitor did not think about it. He continued to hum and watched the dragons with gentle eyes. Time passed slowly. The hatchlings stepped closer, their tiny tails flicking. One brushed against his boot, then stepped back. The janitor smiled softly, and his hand rested on his lap. He said nothing more. He did not need to. The dragons seemed to sense something in him they had never felt before: safety. They were not afraid of his strength, his authority, or his loud voice. They were drawn to his calm heart and steady presence. That night, the station went quiet again. The janitor cleaned the last corridor, put away his bucket, and walked to the habitat one more time. The dragons were awake, watching him. He sat down slowly, careful not to startle them. One dragon inched closer than another. This time they pressed against him lightly, curious and soft. He hummed a lullaby, low and steady. Slowly the dragons curled their tiny bodies near his legs just a little. They did not bite. They did not hiss. They simply rested, trusting him. The station's sensors recorded everything. Scientists and guards were amazed. "How is this possible?" they whispered. They never let anyone else near. They studied the footage again and again, trying to understand. Some even came closer, hoping to replicate the calm. But the hatchlings would not respond. Only the janitor could reach them, only he could earn their trust. The human did not know he was extraordinary. To him, he was just doing his job. Cleaning floors, humming softly, sitting down when tired. Yet, in his quiet way, he had connected with creatures that no one else could. Across the station, whispers began to spread. Humans were not strong like guards, not clever like scientists, but there was something about them. Something that could reach the hearts of dragons and calm their wild spirits. That night, as the janitor walked back to his quarters, the dragons curled in their habitat, safe and still. The station was silent except for the hum of machines and the faint glow of their eyes. No one could explain it, but everyone knew one truth. The smallest, quietest human had touched the hearts of dragons. And in doing so, he had begun a story that no one would ever forget. The next day the station was buzzing again. Everyone wanted to know more about the dragons and the janitor. Scientists, guards, and even some curious aliens watched the habitat closely. They wanted to see if what happened the night before would happen again. The dragons were awake, restless, and alert just like always. But they had learned something new, the calm presence of the janitor. The janitor moved through the halls as usual. His mop and bucket made soft sounds against the metal floor. He hummed a gentle tune from Earth, the same one he had sung the night before. He cleaned slowly, carefully, paying attention to every corner. He did not notice the crowd of onlookers who peeked through glass walls and camera feeds. He never sought attention. He only did his work, and in doing so he unknowingly held the key to calming the dragons. By afternoon the dragons were more alert than ever. The scientists tried to feed them treats, but the hatchlings hissed and snapped. Guards approached cautiously, hands raised to protect themselves. Yet the dragons kept their distance. The tension was high. Everyone waited, holding their breath, watching to see if the janitor would do something extraordinary again. The janitor approached the habitat slowly, just as he had the night before. He paused near the glass and leaned on his mop. He hummed softly, not looking at the dragons directly. They stared at him, heads tilting, eyes glowing. Slowly one tiny dragon stepped forward. Then the other followed, moving cautiously. They had never done this before. Every human or alien had been too loud, too fast, or too tense. The janitor moved none of those ways. He was calm. He was steady. The janitor decided to sit on the floor. He did not reach for the dragons. He did not speak loudly. He simply rested there, humming. The dragons approached, sniffing the air. One brushed against his boot. Another stepped closer, careful and slow. The janitor kept still, breathing calmly. He did not flinch or make sudden movements. His presence was quiet, steady, and unthreatening. The other humans on the station could hardly believe it. Scientists whispered to each other, "They're really doing it, they're getting closer." Guards nodded, amazed. The hatchlings circled the janitor, blinking and tilting their heads. They did not bite. They did not hiss. They did not jump away. They simply tested his calmness. Then something incredible happened. One hatchling slowly crawled onto his lap. Its tiny claws were careful, and it settled gently. The janitor did not move. He let it rest there. The other hatchling followed. Soon, both dragons were curled on his lap, breathing softly. The janitor hummed and smiled slightly. He did not speak. He did not try to control them. He only sat quietly, letting them feel safe. The station's cameras captured every moment. People watching on screens gasped. No one had ever seen this before. Every other human, alien, and guard had tried to get close. Every attempt had ended in hissing, snapping, or retreat. Yet here was a simple janitor, small and gentle, holding the trust of creatures that no one else could reach. The scientists began to study what was happening. "It's not strength. It's not knowledge. It's calm," one whispered. Another said, "It's patience and care. They trust him." Guards shook their heads. "How can a human do this?" they asked. But no answer came. The janitor did not know he was extraordinary. To him it was simple. He was tired, he was resting, and the dragons needed comfort. That was all. For the hatchlings this was new and confusing. They had tested everyone else. Loud voices, sudden movements, forceful attempts, all had failed. But this human did not scare them. He did not demand anything. He simply existed, steady and calm. Slowly they began to understand something they had never known. Not all beings were dangerous. Some were gentle. Some were patient. Some could be trusted. The janitor felt warmth as the dragons curled on his lap. He hummed softly, remembering songs from his childhood on Earth. The dragons seemed to relax more with each note. Their tiny wings rested, their tails flicked softly, and their breathing became even. For the first time they felt safe. They had chosen him. Not because of his power or knowledge, but because of his heart. Other station workers continued to watch in awe. Some tried to imitate him, sitting quietly, humming and moving slowly. But the dragons would not approach. They were learning something unique. The janitor's calmness could not be copied. It came from experience, patience, and a quiet presence that could not be faked. As the sun set over the volcanic world, the station fell quiet. Machines hummed softly. The dragons remained on the janitor's lap, calm and trusting. The human did not move. He simply let them rest, humming gently. He had made an impossible choice without knowing it. He had given his calm and patience freely, and in return, He had earned the trust of creatures that no one else could reach. It was a small, simple moment, but it was powerful. Across the station, everyone realized something about humans. They were not the strongest. They were not the fastest. But they had something else: the ability to connect, to soothe, and to earn trust where others could not. And in that quiet moment, a human janitor became more important than anyone had imagined. And this moment marked a turning point. The dragons had chosen him, and no one would forget it. The dragon's behavior surprised everyone on the station. No human, no alien, no guard could get even close to them before. Yet the janitor had earned their trust. Scientists studied the recordings again and again, trying to understand what was happening. They checked the dragon's heart rates, movements, and reactions. Every measure showed the same thing. The hatchlings were calm, relaxed, and comfortable, only when the janitor was near. The janitor continued his daily routine without noticing the attention. He cleaned halls, polished floors, emptied trash, and hummed softly. He never shouted or hurried. He never forced the dragons to come to him. He only existed in their space, quietly and patiently. That was enough. The hatchlings would follow his movements with their glowing eyes, tilting their heads as if trying to understand him. The other humans and aliens on the station were amazed. Guards tried to mimic the janitor's calmness, moving slowly and speaking softly, but the dragons would not approach. Scientists tried to analyze the pattern, adjusting lights and sounds, trying to create the same conditions. Nothing worked. The dragons had learned that it was not about environment or routine. It was about the janitor himself. His calmness, patience, and quiet presence could not be copied. The dragons began to respond to him in small ways. They would nuzzle his boots, flick their tails near his hands, and blink slowly when he hummed. They seemed to enjoy his quiet songs, as if they understood the comfort in his voice. Their small claws rested gently on his lap without fear, and their tiny wings relaxed. They had never trusted anyone like this before. It was clear to everyone watching: the janitor had something special. One scientist whispered, "They are sensing his heart, not his hands. They know he is safe." Another said, "It is more than patience. It is care, understanding, and something they feel but cannot explain." Guards nodded, amazed at the power of simple presence. Everyone on the station began to see humans differently. They realized that strength and authority were not the only ways to earn respect. Sometimes quiet kindness could do more than force or knowledge ever could. The janitor did not notice the experiments or the attention. He continued to work as he always had. One evening, after finishing his cleaning, he sat near the dragon's habitat as he often did. The hatchlings approached him slowly. One climbed onto his lap, and the other rested against his side. The janitor hummed softly, rocking slightly as he watched them. They closed their eyes, breathing gently, completely at ease. For the dragons, the janitor represented safety and calm. They had spent their short lives testing everyone who came near them. Loud voices, fast movements, and harsh commands had always made them defensive. But the janitor's presence was different. He was quiet, steady, and gentle. He did not demand attention or force obedience. He simply existed with them, respecting their space. This made the dragons feel secure. The station began to understand something important about humans. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest or the most powerful. But they had something unique: the ability to connect with other beings through trust and calmness. The dragon's behavior became a lesson for everyone. Strength alone could not tame the hatchlings. Patience, understanding, and quiet care were far more effective. The janitor continued to sit with the hatchlings, unaware of the significance of his actions. He hummed old tunes from Earth, soft and gentle, as the dragons rested on his lap. Their tiny claws flexed lightly, their wings twitched with comfort, and their eyes glowed softly. Every movement showed trust and calm. No other human or alien had ever earned this level of connection. The station slowly changed its rules about the dragons. Only the janitor was allowed to sit near them freely. Guards and scientists would watch from a distance, taking notes and recording data, but they could not intervene. The dragons would not respond to anyone else. The janitor had earned their loyalty in a way no one else could. Even small actions made a difference. When the janitor cleaned near the habitat, he moved slowly and deliberately. When he hummed, the dragons tilted their heads. When he sat quietly, they approached. They had learned that he was safe, steady, and kind. In return, he had earned their trust completely. By the end of the week, the station understood a truth that could not be measured with machines or tests. Humans had something unique that could calm even the wildest creatures. Strength and intelligence mattered, but so did patience, care, and the ability to connect. The janitor had shown that a small, quiet human could do what no other being could. The dragons had chosen him, and in doing so, they had taught everyone on the station an important lesson about the value of trust, calm, and understanding. As the night fell over the volcanic world below, the janitor sat with the hatchlings on his lap. The station was silent, except for the hum of machines and the soft breathing of the dragons. They were safe. They were calm. And they had found someone they could trust. Humanity's quiet strength had made all the difference. The days passed slowly on the space station, but everything had changed. The dragons were no longer wild and defensive. They had found trust in the human janitor, and that trust spread calm throughout their small habitat. Scientists continued to study them, guards continued to watch, and aliens continued to whisper in amazement. But all attention was secondary. The dragons only responded to the janitor, and he continued his simple work, unaware of how important he had become. The janitor went about his daily routine, cleaning halls, polishing floors, and humming softly. He did not consider himself a hero or a caretaker. He was just a man doing his job, moving through the station quietly and calmly. Yet everywhere he went, the dragons noticed him. When he paused to rest, they approached. When he hummed a tune, they listened. Their little bodies relaxed completely in his presence. Every movement he made, no matter how small, seemed to reassure them. Other people on the station began to understand what was happening. Strength, speed, or intelligence could not gain the dragon's trust. Only patience, gentleness, and calm could do so. Guards learned to step back. Scientists learned to observe quietly. Even alien visitors who had never seen humans realized that these small beings could achieve something no other species could. Humans had a gift for connection. They could earn trust without force. They could calm hearts without commands. The janitor had become a symbol of this gift. Even though he had no title, no authority, and no special training, he had done what no one else could. The dragons trusted him completely. They curled up on his lap without fear. They nuzzled his hands and legs with their tiny claws. They listened to his hums and blinked slowly, comforted by his presence. In return, he offered them the simplest thing: attention, patience, and care. As the hatchlings grew, the station adjusted its rules. The dragon's habitat became a quiet zone. Only the janitor was allowed close. Scientists and guards observed from behind glass or cameras. Visitors could watch but could not interact. The dragons had chosen their caretaker, and their choice was respected. For the first time, the station learned that trust could not be forced. It had to be earned. And it could come from the smallest and simplest of beings. The janitor did not seek recognition. He did not expect thanks or praise. He continued his work, humming softly, sitting near the dragons when he could, and cleaning the halls when he could not. Yet in his quiet way, he became the most important person on the station. He had shown that courage was not always loud. Strength was not always measured by power. And wisdom was not always found in study. Sometimes the greatest gift was simply to care. The dragon's behavior also changed the station's culture. Scientists learned to observe more gently. Guards learned to move with patience. Even other species on the station began to appreciate calm and trust. The story of the janitor and the dragons spread quietly, whispered in halls and shared through recordings. It was not a story of weapons, technology, or power. It was a story of connection, patience, and the quiet strength of humanity. One evening, the janitor sat on the floor of the habitat, humming a lullaby. The hatchlings curled on his lap, their small bodies warm and soft. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening to their tiny breaths. Outside, the volcanic world glowed with rivers of molten lava, reflecting in the station's windows. Inside there was peace. The dragons were safe. The janitor was calm. And the station had learned something greater than science or technology. They had learned that humans could inspire trust and calm hearts in ways no one else could. The scientists continued to take notes, recording every small movement of the dragons. But they also watched the janitor. They realized that no amount of data could explain what he had done. It was not about science alone. It was about patience, gentleness, and the ability to care. And those were gifts humans carried naturally. The hatchlings grew stronger every day, but they never left the janitor's side. They had chosen him and they would not forget. Other humans and aliens could approach, but the dragons remained with the man who had shown them calm and care. And the janitor never sought their loyalty. He simply existed quietly, doing his work, humming softly, and letting the dragons trust him on their own terms. In the end, the station learned an important truth. Great strength did not always come from weapons or authority. True power could come from quiet patience, gentle care, and the ability to earn trust. The janitor, small and simple, had achieved something extraordinary. He had shown that even in a universe full of strong beings and dangerous creatures, humanity could shine through the smallest acts of kindness. And so, a human janitor, unnoticed by most, became the hero of the dragons. Not through force or knowledge but through calm, patience and the ability to care. The hatchlings slept peacefully on his lap, and the station knew that they had witnessed something rare, the quiet, undeniable strength of a human heart.